It sounds like you keep yourself busy with being the CEO of a law firm, as well as having legal work. There's lots to do.
We try to turn discovery into an offensive weapon for our client.
I love it simply because you've put the client first, right?
Most people want to know if they're not doing a good job because they want to fix it.
That reminds me of a quote. Even Roger Federer needs a coach.
I think the hardest business problem to solve now is what do you do in a world where your team is so dispersed?
Welcome to the podcast from Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a company that works with professional services firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Sterling Miller, the CEO and Senior Counsel of Hilgers Graben, the largest female-owned law firm in the world. Sterling brings a truly unique perspective to the legal industry. Under Sterling's leadership, Hilgers Graben has grown from 30 to over 150 attorneys while building a client roster of name brand companies who've discovered they can get the same high-quality legal work for about half the cost of traditional firms. The firm operates on a simple but powerful philosophy: look at everything big law does and do the opposite. Today, we're going to dive into his unconventional approach to legal services, the no-jerks culture that drives their success, and what he's learned about building a law firm that actually serves both clients and lawyers better. Sterling, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, thanks. And thanks to my mom for writing that introduction.
No.
Appreciate that. Very proud.
Yeah. Well, from your background and everything you've said previously, I know that your journey has been an interesting one in coming into where you are today, but also the Hilgers Graben in general. It's quite an impressive feat that you're currently running. So I guess for the viewers and listeners out there who maybe are not familiar with you and your journey and the company, could you maybe share a little bit more about your background and your journey to where you are today?
Sure. So I was raised in Nebraska, which is right in the middle of the United States, where cows outnumber people. And I knew pretty early two things. I wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to go somewhere outside of Nebraska. Nothing wrong with Nebraska. My parents are still there, but I wanted to see something different. And I ended up law school in St. Louis at Washington University, and I practiced law at a big firm, big at the time. This was been back in the late 80s in St. Louis, doing corporate and litigation. And I got married. My wife's from Dallas. So like many married men, you follow them. And I ended up in-house at American Airlines, which was a fantastic company, a fantastic job. And as part of that, I started doing a lot of work for their technology division, which was called Sabre. So there was the airline, and then there was all the computer stuff, the technology that ran the airline and automated travel agents, which I thought was just fascinating. And sure enough, a couple of years later, they spun that division out as Sabre, and they asked if I wanted to go along to be a part of that new legal department. And I'm a big believer, if you can get in on the ground floor of something, you should take it, because almost inevitably it's going to be better than working your way up through the already existent food chain. So I took that position and I did that for several years. And Sabre owned a travel website called Travelocity, which many people may know. Home of the Roaming Gnome, was a lot of fun, and they needed a general counsel. So I went to do that for a few years, which was great training, very autonomous, reported in directly into the CEO. Sabre was taken private. Everything got rolled up and the general counsel retired, and they asked me to be general counsel of the entire thing, which I was pleased to do. So I did that for a few years, and then we had an IPO. That would have been around 2014. Highly recommend it. Anyone who can be part of an IPO, it's generally a pretty good deal. And after that, I retired for the first time. I just said, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm cashing out my chips and I'm going to do something different. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I did a couple things. I wrote my first book on the NFL, professional football here in the United States. And I started this blog called 10 Things You Need to Know as In-House Counsel, which talks about a lot of my experiences and things you need to know to be a successful, I hope, successful in-house lawyer. And I started working part-time for Hilgers Graben, which was started by a couple of lawyers who used to work for me as outside counsel when they were at a big law firm here in Dallas. And they had a very unique model, certainly at that time, is it was going to be based in Nebraska. That's where the Hilgers part of the firm is from. And they were going to take advantage of all the low cost labor, the low cost real estate, everything that you could do to drive the infrastructure costs down, and also have a unique compensation model that was very different from traditional law firms, and hire the same talent, but be able to provide that talent to clients at a significant discount. And as an in-house lawyer at the time, I said, well, that sounds awesome. I'll have some of that. And I did use the firm later on when I was working for a couple of years with them. And then I went back in-house at a technology company in Silicon Valley. Did that for a couple of years, got sold to Adobe. My mom doesn't think I can hold a job, but I tell her these are good things. And I had a choice. Like a lot of people, you have that moment where you have to decide, what do you really want to do? And it was, do you want to go back in-house? There were lots of opportunities to do that. And I really, really love being an in-house lawyer, or go back to this, at the time, really small law firm. And I felt there was something really unique and different about the model. It was a ground floor opportunity, which I'm a big believer in. And there was a cultural aspect to it that really appealed to me that was very different than either what I had experienced in my first law firm or what I had seen as a client interacting with lots of lawyers at big law firms. And I made the choice to come back to Hilgers Graben. And the Mike Hilgers of Hilgers Graben is now the Attorney General of Nebraska. And as he was running for that office, he had kind of been running the day-to-day operations of the firm. They needed someone, in the event that he won, who would be basically the chief executive officer of the law firm. And that was me. So because I had run big legal departments, big budgets, dealt with all the headaches that you deal with. And that was great. So we went from about 30 when I started, and it has been a hockey stick of growth. We're now, as you mentioned, a little over 150 lawyers, where we have lawyers in almost 30 states here in the US. We have some large offices in several states, but our headquarters is in Nebraska. I happen to be in the Dallas office. And more, we're finding that clients are saying, you know what, that's a great model. Let's go. Let's give that a try. And once they try it, they keep coming back. So it's been very successful so far. Okay, that's a lot. So I'll stop giving my background.
I absolutely love it though. It's so interesting to hear because it's your journey from small firm to really, well, big firm, and then journeying through your corporate journey, right? And building the experience that you have for so long, and then returning to a firm that you were already at a very small place, and then now it's got to a place where you've grown it over 150 employees. I guess the business model element of it really does interest me, primarily because it's different, right? And a lot of the times, different is good so long as you have structure behind it and you have a plan behind it. So talk to me more about why the business model of, and it might just be it's cheaper, that's why. But talk to me why it's working so well, especially with big name brands and big name clients.
Right, right. Well, if you start with just look at the cost structure, which is a huge part of why the rates are so much lower than what we consider our competitors. And we consider our competitors to be the big law firms. And we're talking thousands of lawyers. Now, again, we're only 150, but the quality that we bring to the table, we would stack that up with any law firm in the United States. And we only operate in the US currently. And so what we've been able to do, if you look at a traditional big law firm model, it's really based around several things. One, prime real estate, prime location, a top end finish out all through the offices. And as a client, I have to tell you, it was pretty fun, to go to New York, have the offices overlooking Central Park, marble, whatever, everything that you could possibly want as an employee was in this office space. But it was the most expensive office space. And while it was luxurious, none of that benefits the client. Absolutely zero. Clients, especially now, rarely come to your office. And if they do, as long as it's nice, right? And as long as it's comfortable for your employees, it's in a reasonably good location, you can operate your law firm at a significantly lower cost point just from the real estate, let alone other infrastructure, the employee costs. what we do. We don't have a lot of big law firms have these guaranteed partner salaries for millions and millions of dollars. That is a sunk cost that doesn't always ban out or play out over the course of the time that lawyer's with the firm. And they also have a kind of a other, what we call sunk infrastructure costs about how they operate the firm. So what we decided to do, one, again, let's start with offices that are practical and good. Let's have a compensation structure that actually makes sense where we don't have to charge $3,000 an hour so one of the partners can make their guaranteed salary. That's really what drives a lot of the rates that you pay at big law firms. It's not only the infrastructure, but the cost of what they are promising the lawyers who go there to work. And the best story I have, so my daughter is 2 years out of law school. She's a lawyer here in Dallas at one of the big law firms, and her hourly rate is more than mine. And I've been practicing law for over 30 years. Wow. So you can go to the client and go, hey, you can have the second-year lawyer or you can have the 30-year lawyer. The 30-year lawyer is actually a little less expensive. Which would you prefer? And what we call that the point of believability. Because one of the hardest things to do, one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is getting in front of clients to assure them and convince them that, yes, this is really as good as it sounds. These people are the same lawyers who yesterday you were paying $1,500 an hour are now at our firm for half that. And it gives those lawyers, this is really the key. The lawyers who are at those big law firms and have to charge those rates have a very hard time developing their own book of business, because those rates are paid by a handful of very large companies that can afford it and want that law firm or the lawyers that they're working with. There are so many other companies and potential clients out there who want that type of service, want that level of strategic thinking, all the things that what you want from a big law firm. They just can't afford it. If you can convince them that it's the same thing, it's just a lot less expensive, that we are truly disrupting this model and they believe it, that's when we start to really make the inroads. And look, they're not going to hire us for everything, and we certainly understand that, but we don't need everything. We'll take 4 or 5 projects and do a really good job with it, and that just snowballs. And then you get more and more, because once they see, oh, so-and-so is using you, okay, that's kind of a seal of approval. It starts to build. And that's really what we've seen over the last several years is more and more clients going, yep, that works. I like it. And it's been a great experience, both for the client, I think, financially and with the type of advice they're getting, and also for the firm, both in terms of the opportunities we're giving our lawyers, but also the financial rewards that we get. So it's been really fun. It's kind of what I thought was going to be the case when I passed on going back in-house and took that chance on this firm. It's really rewarding to see it play out the way that we kind of war gamed it out at the very beginning. This is what we think will happen over the next several years.
I think it's really interesting. It's essentially a top-down pyramid approach, right? Rather than what you would typically see. You'd see a lot of lower level lawyers or associates working on a specific case, and it kind of works up towards the partner level, and it builds up that the caseload builds up and the costs kind of ramp up. Whereas going down with a pyramid down almost approach, you're getting a high quality lawyer coming in, giving you the same kind of work, but at a far, far higher level of expertise. So it's really interesting model, especially when you take into account that the savings that are involved. In terms of then, and especially within legal and law itself, there's typically long processes, long projects, and long cases that can arise. Dealing with things like e-discovery and the current process that is, from my understanding, insanely expensive and riddled with errors. Explain to me what the difference you bring or Hilgers Graben brings to the table.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it also, to talk about that, one of the very first things you need to understand is way back when we decided on 2 things. We're going to run the law firm like a business and not like a law firm, right? So we talked a little bit about that. How would a business approach this problem, right? They're going to move to a low cost manufacturing place, et cetera. And then what are the real pain points that clients have? And where is our flexibility in our model that allows us to solve those pain points at a way that is both satisfactory from a legal standpoint, right? The actual legal work, but also almost more importantly, from a cost standpoint.
Mm,
Because as you've started to allude to, the cost of litigation, especially in the United States, is
mm,
incredibly high. And I came up doing litigation. I was head of litigation at in-house. I was general counsel. I paid the bills. And just every year, you just kind of were scratching your head, like, how long can this go on? And short of the trial, so actually being in trial, which is rare.
mm,
Most cases in the United States settle well before they ever get to trial. So maybe 2 or 3% of lawsuits that are filed actually go to trial. Where the real battles are, so where the real cost is in what we call the discovery period. That's when you're getting documents, getting written answers, you're taking depositions. There's all kinds of motions, all leading up to probably some type of dispositive motion like a summary judgment motion, and then ultimately trial, but highly unlikely. So focusing on the real pain point, which isn't the trial, it's the
mm,
e-discovery. And now, as you can imagine, with e-discovery, the reason it's so expensive is the volume of information is overwhelming. I mean, terabytes and gigabytes and mega giga terabytes. You name it, it is unbelievable the
yeah,
amount of information, and it's getting worse, right? So we're talking about text messages,
mm,
Teams, emails, calendars, voicemail messages, your phone, your computers, everything now goes into this mix. And the traditional e-discovery process, and this is what I was raised on and what I remember, is you go and you hire a bunch of different vendors, right? You have one vendor who's going to process all the data and store all the data. You have another vendor who's going to have a group of contract lawyers who are going to go through all these documents. You're going to give this lawyer 1,000, this lawyer 1,000, this lawyer 1,000. They're just going to go through them. They're going to do what's called coding. Is this responsive? Is it not responsive? What issue is it responsive to? Then you have your big law firm, and their lawyers are going to oftentimes review the work of the review lawyers because it isn't very good or it's not in the shape that they need it to tie into the issues that are important, either for those dispositive motions, for the depositions, or ultimately the trial. When you have three vendors, all of whom are independent, there are tensions between them. When you do a review process that's sequential, the person here in that 1,000 documents may see a contract 3 or 4 times. There may be another person over here looking at, another 1,000 documents, seeing the same contract. They may code them completely differently because that's human nature. They may see something different. And one of the things that we do with our discovery process is we have some proprietary tools and technology that we can collapse all of those documents and give to the reviewers who are not contract lawyers. They're W-2 employees, former litigators, so they know what they're doing. We
mm,
can give them the similar documents.
mm,
So that contract is going to get reviewed by one lawyer every
mm,
time. So it's going to be coded consistently. It's not going to escape. The people over here will be looking at different things. So getting rid of that, everybody looks at just whatever mess of documents gets thrown their way. Then we have a number of tools that do quality checks. We're looking for privileged documents, making sure those don't get sent out, hot documents, things that are actually relevant to the case and the trial. And we try to turn discovery into an offensive weapon for our client. If you're the plaintiff or the defendant, it's not just something you have to get through. It's actually key to winning the case. And how do you structure it that way? And then do it in a way that is actually better, faster, and less expensive than this traditional model. We have our own hosting company. We have our own data processing. We can collect the documents, we can process them, we can review them, we can feed them to our trial team, or we partner with other large law firms and we are, their partner, giving them the documents that they need. And the way the client benefits, not only from the lower cost from our standpoint, is the law firm that they're paying $1,000 an hour to, or even $800 an hour for an associate.
mm,
They're not spending their time on document issues. They're spending their time on winning the trial,
mm,
winning the big deposition, winning the strategic motion, which is really where the value is, I think, in those large law firms, what you're paying for versus having a fourth or fifth year lawyer running a discovery process that they have no interest in running and having them have to clean up all the mess they get from the traditional review shop. So we think we have solved a lot of pain points. And that is one of our fastest growing aspects of the firm, is that entire e-discovery process and taking that pain point away from the client.
I love it simply because you've put the client first, right? You're looking at taking a more client-centric approach to everything and then looking at the pain points you can solve to be able to compete. If you're competing with the big law, you need to be able to actually solve the problems that other companies and other smaller clients might have, primarily because that is your silver bullet, right? If it comes back to, oh, we go with this name brand that we know is safe, it will cost us more, but we know it's okay. Or this one, we go, okay, well, you're looking after us. We come first to you. We're looking at constantly putting the client first. I think it's incredibly appropriate approach. Clearly, it's disrupting the industry, and clearly, it's doing well for Hilgers Graben because you're growing and you've grown very quickly over the last few years. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a really insightful point. So one of the things we like well, because I was in-house for so long, about 25 years of my career, I was an in-house lawyer. All the pain points that I was just talking about, I saw firsthand, either as running the litigation group or as general counsel. So I have a lot of credibility when we go and talk to different clients about, I know what's going on, especially when it's this big piece of litigation comes in, CEO and the board goes, we want you to hire, the best law firm in the world. This is that important. Do this. And the CFO over here is going, I don't want you to spend more than this. And there's that tension between what people want in terms of the law firm based on the issue, but also the realities of what can we actually afford without breaking the bank at the company. And one of the things that we can do, you can hire us to do the entire case. Have the same litigators that you have at Big Law. We can do everything start to finish at our rates, or go ahead and hire big name brand. I understand. I had that pressure as a general counsel where, you go in and you say, hey, we hired Hilgers Graben. And they all go like, what? Who are these guys? You need to go in and say, we hired brand X. And everybody goes, hallelujah, that's fantastic. But behind the scenes,
people are pulling their hair out.
we've hired Hilgers Graben to work with them. And Hilgers Graben's going to do a lot of this kind of day-to-day work at a significantly lower cost point. So you can get the best of what the board wants. You have the name brand over here, but the CFO is happy because all this behind the scenes backroom stuff is getting done at a significantly lower price point. And if you can balance that out in a way that you can convince the client that you get the best of both worlds, that's nirvana for an in-house lawyer, because I can do this on the budget that you're giving me, and I can provide the quality, or at least the name brand quality that you want on the front end. And that's a unique place to be. There's not a lot of firms out there doing anything like that.
Absolutely. And it's always interesting to see the new approaches enter into the market and actually go, okay, well, how can we change? Because if everything stayed the same forever, then we don't live in a world like that. There's always going to be innovation and things like that. Hilgers Graben is the largest female-owned law firm in the US, maybe, as well as
probably the world, I would imagine.
Exactly.
If it's that in the US, maybe not, but in the US for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned having a female boss is different. Can you elaborate on how this impacts the firm's culture and operations?
Yes. So when Mike Hilgers became Attorney General several years ago, his shares, because he obviously couldn't own part of a law firm, his shares went to his wife, one of the co-founders, Heather, and because of that, she owns the vast majority of the firm. And that's really, in my experience, because I worked with female CEOs in the past, having a female as a boss is a very different experience, at least for men, because what I experience, even if you are really good friends with the CEO as a general counsel, there is always some type of clashing going on underneath the surface where someone has to assert their dominance either on this issue or just in general. And that friction that men have between themselves, again, even if their intentions are 100% good and they love each other like brothers, having a female for a boss, you do not have that. You don't experience that. You experience a lot more of how can we solve the problem How can you help me solve the problem? I really want to hear everything that you have to say on this. And I'm not necessarily going to filter it through my own, I have to show that I am the boss here filter. And that's very different. And I like working in that environment because it's a lot more collaborative than reporting to a male. And I think that it also permeates the culture of the firm then, because you have a lot less of, having worked for lots of men before, a lot less testosterone in the executive team because it's just a more practical, let's get this done. What do we need to do? Here's one of the great conundrums, I think, in the C-suite, certainly in my experience as general counsel. There are lots of CEOs who say they want to hear other opinions and they want to hear that, if you disagree with me, I want to hear it. The minute different opinion or you disagree with them, I mean, it's like you just got taken out back and punched. And when that happens, you don't get different opinions and you don't get, disagreements. You get, oh yeah, that sounds great. Because who wants to deal with that crap, right?
Yeah.
With a female boss, I just have never experienced that. If they disagree with me, then disagree. As long as you do it respectfully, disagree. Have a different opinion. I really want to take them on. And one of the things that I tried to do, especially as an in-house lawyer, and I still try to do this as CEO, I can remember as general counsel telling my team, I want you to come in. I'm going to lay out this position to you, and I want you to tear it apart. I want you to find every weakness. I want you to just find out where it sucks and tell me where it's good, but I want you to be honest. And at first, they're like, what? Like, I can't do that. I go, look, I'm going to the board next week with this. And if I can't handle you guys picking it apart, there's no way I'm going to be able to handle what the board's going to come up with. And once they understand that you truly want it, there are no repercussions. It's just really appreciate that humbleness that you can bring to the table. I think I learned that primarily from having a female boss at one point in my career. And it's reinforced here at Hilgers Graben. There is a level of humbleness that I think benefits you as a leader because you don't know everything and you can't know everything and you don't have to pretend like you know everything, because that's why you have all these great people around you to help you solve the problem, to bring knowledge to the table that you do not have. And all it takes is for you to be receptive and to be respectful of all those other ways of doing things, the different opinions, the fact that they may disagree with you, and then take it all under consideration. And again, I think it's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think a lot of that comes from having a female boss here at the firm.
I think you're spot on. I think one of the key things you mentioned is collaboration, right? And having a good team around you is one thing, but having a good team around you that's willing to collaborate with each other really makes a difference. And then you see it in sports, you see it in good businesses and in bad businesses. A team that collaborates with each other, that works and functions as a team, is willing to call people out or willing in a respectful manner, but always for the best of others, has a greater chance of success than those who are scared to maybe say something or scared of the hierarchy or whatever it might be. And I think it's a really interesting point you mentioned there in your different experiences between dealing with the C-suite and dealing with the testosterone-filled environments versus female-led leadership, really.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, that's another great point that you touched on, the calling people out in a respectful way. And that's really hard for any business, law firm, making widgets, whatever. And it's hard on either side because the people lower in the org chart are afraid about criticizing or calling out the leaders. And the leaders, believe it or not, especially managers, do not want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So pointing out where people are not doing a good job is hard for them. It's not fun, right? You're not the cool boss. You're not the fun boss. You're the, oh my God. So how do you find a way to have those types of conversations with people? And what I've found is I have yet to find someone who wasn't open to, here's what I need from you. Here's what I need you to do. How can we work together to get that? Most people want to know if they're not doing a good job because they want to fix it. But they don't know they have to fix it until you tell them. And if you don't tell them, they're going to keep chugging along, doing the things that they think are right. And then at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to get so frustrated with them, you're going to fire them. Whereas you had just had that conversation with them a year ago or months ago or whatever the case may be, you may have changed their trajectory dramatically. And one of the things that I tried to do, certainly as a young lawyer, and definitely when I went in-house, I always wanted to make it easy for my boss to give me feedback.
Yeah.
And I would literally start with, if I am doing something wrong, tell me. I can take it. I want to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. If you have a problem with what I'm doing, raise it now. Don't save it for the review 8 months from now, or you're going to sandbag me with it. Just tell me. And I found if you make it easy, you tell them it's okay to give you hard feedback. That hard feedback is really, that's where you learn how to do the job. And if you never get that hard feedback, how do you learn to do the job? I just, how do you ever going to get ahead if no one's ever telling you that you're not doing things the right way, or you need to do better, or you need to do more? It becomes what we call here in the US, just, a bunch of participation trophies. Hey, you showed up. Great job.
Yeah.
Well, great job just showing up. That's the ticket in.
So true.
How do you get past that? And I think having that culture that encourages that type of honest feedback, again, respectful, it's not coming from a place of anger. It's coming from a place of, we want you to succeed. And here's what you have to do. Now, some people will say, you know what? I don't want to do that. They'll go somewhere else. And that's okay. People leave businesses all the time to do something different. This doesn't mean a business is a failure. Doesn't mean you're a failure as a manager. But it all starts with just being honest about how things are going with all of your.
It reminds me of a quote, even Roger Federer needs a coach, right? And it's true. Like, you could be the best tennis player in the world or the best employee in the world, but there are still things that you could be better at or you could improve. And that will only pave the way for a successful career in the long term. And it's that thing, I loved what you said, is that you gave permission to give feedback. And often if you give that permission to give hard feedback, the feedback will come. Because people are more comfortable to give that feedback. You've given them permission, they're more willing to give it. And then that's where you might get uncomfortable in that moment, but growth comes in the uncomfortability of those moments, right? Absolutely love it. So in this segment of the podcast, we like to call the Entrepreneur's Room. And it's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate in their business. So the first question I'd like to ask at this stage of the podcast is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
Well, data, I have to say. I start my day with all kinds of charts about the company. We use Power BI for that. We have a whole litany of things that we're looking for. The one that I pay the most attention to, of course, are the revenues, or at least the billable revenues, and then also the receivables. Those are the biggest. In my opinion, everything comes down to, money coming in the door is number one, bills going out the door is number two, and then everything else is going to come in after that. But we do look at utilization, like who's busy, who needs things to do. One of the things that we spend a lot of time on is trying to figure out who actually needs more to do and who needs less to do. We have targets for hours, which is something I think all law firms do. We just don't use it as a punishment.
Yeah.
We use it for what is a reasonable amount of hours for a person to have that allows them to have not only a great professional life, but also a life at home. It doesn't mean it's straight lined, right? There are going to be cases that it's going to ruin your weekend, your vacation. That all happens in law, and you have to accept that. But on average, if someone's really busy, we should be taking work and trying to move it to someone else to bring those levels down. So there's a lot of data that I have, and I get data then at the end of the day. So I start and end my day with a lot of data. And then I think, like any executive person, tons of meetings. There's no way to escape all of them. I do try frantically sometimes. It's just it's the nature of the beast. We do try to be smart about our meetings. And one of the things I like that we do is every year, Heather Hilgers and I, we call it the CEO Summit, and we get together. We do a lot of things, but one of the things we do is we look at all the meetings.
Yeah.
And we try to decide, is this meeting worth keeping? Does this meeting need to change? Are there things about this meeting that are working or aren't working? And then we try to do a complete refresh every year of the meetings. We don't just have the meeting because we've had the meeting for the last 10 years. We have the meeting because it's important to have the meeting, and we try to make it as long as it needs to be, and not the default of it's an hour, right? Everything's an hour. If we'll schedule a meeting, it's an hour, and you go, this is going to be 10 minutes.
Exactly.
A 15-minute meeting, but they block an hour on your calendar.
Yeah.
How do you get around that? So lots of meetings. I also practice law, which was something that I insisted that I get to do. So I have clients, work that in bits of the day. And then when I have some free time, I still write the blog for in-house lawyers we'll be going on year 12.
Wow.
And then I've written 6 books. I'm on book number 7, which is almost done. Go to the publisher here in a couple of weeks. So I try to get those. I'm a master at taking advantage of little bits of time. So I would say data, meetings, dealing with all the stuff that comes out of those meetings, some legal work, and then finding time to do things that aren't necessarily tied to any of those. So that's a pretty typical day.
I absolutely love it because it sounds like you keep yourself busy. And with it being the CEO of a law firm, as well as having legal work, there's lots to do. So it's always interesting to hear that. And I always love asking that question because you really get some insights on leadership and C-suite individuals working. So it's interesting. How are you currently growing the business? What type of business development activities are you currently doing to grow the organization?
Yes, we are not growing just to grow. So we grow because the work is there and the work demands it. I think like a lot of businesses, you try to make do with the team you have. Really has to kind of get stretched before you start adding other people, because in the law business, like lots of companies, you're one phone call away from pencils down and you're another phone call away from I need everybody you can possibly get in the room. And balancing that's one of the things that we look at is we also try to project 30 days, 60 days, 90 days out, even longer if we can, like what's coming. And do we need to really push the pipeline, or do we need to maybe just kind of let things sit for a little bit? I think all lawyers, you never really let anything sit. You're always trying to get the next case, the next thing. And so we spend a lot of time basically marketing, the litigation services that we have, the e-discovery services that we have. We do other things. We have a relatively new corporate group. It's been about a year, but it's been growing leaps and bounds. And it's the same kind of model, really, really smart lawyers doing basic corporate work for about half the cost. That's really started to take off. And one of the really unique things we've started doing is we're getting into the artificial intelligence. How can our clients incorporate artificial intelligence in the right way? What are the issues? What do they need to be watching out for? How do you do it? I think, especially in-house legal departments, they're very excited about the technology, and they should be, but they don't know how to take that next step. And there's a lot of fear about artificial intelligence. Like, am I going to give away the trade secrets of the company? Is it going to hallucinate? Is it going to take my job? How do you help them work through all those issues? And that's something we've started doing in the last 2 or 3 months. And that's really, really resonated with a lot of clients and even a lot of potential clients. They just hear about it and they ask, hey, can we get in on one of those sessions? And absolutely, we would do that. I would say most of our marketing is LinkedIn. That tends to be where our audience is. So we have, we write articles, we do videos, we do all the things that you would do from a very traditional standpoint. We're in the process of revamping our website. We know a lot of people go to the website as the first place, and you want to make sure that that experience and the information that they get underlines. And the one thing that I'll take credit for this, we have what we call one pagers. And that is different aspects of our firm in a marketing collateral piece that is literally one page. It may be front and back rarely, but usually it's just one page. And the reason for that was when I was in-house, and I think they still do this, I would get these 60, 70 page marketing books from big law firms. And I got to tell you, they just go right in the trash. Big law guys, if you're listening, I'm sorry. No one's looking at them. My team would just go, I don't want to read this. So what would actually be useful is one page. Because when I was in-house, we would if we would go do lobbying, which my government affairs reported to me at several companies, you would have a leave behind that was usually one page, just the highlights of what you wanted that person to know from the meeting. So we adopted that, and we have a couple dozens of what we call those one pagers. And we're constantly creating those because they work. One page, people can look at one page with a call to action, like, call us, versus flipping through a book of stuff that they don't care about. So trying to combine all those different elements, a little bit of traditional law firm, but a lot of how would a business market itself? Because again, that's what we are. How would we do that? So that's a lot of it. And we encourage everyone to develop business. If you bring in your first client, you get a cowbell, like when they ringing the cowbell. And that's a big moment for everyone to get your cowbell. And we really encourage everyone, and we try to teach them how to do it. And then we have regular meetings on business development, meetings among business developers. Again, lots of meetings, but all of that is necessary to just keep the wheels turning. And that's my job. I keep the wheels turning.
Keep the wheels turning. Well, Sterling, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. It's been a really insightful conversation. I really loved it. I like to end every single podcast with the same question. And that is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
Oh, wow. That is such a hard question.
Yeah.
I think the hardest business problem to solve now is, what do you do in a world where your team is so dispersed? Used to be everybody was in a building, everybody was together. And even though we were doing remote work and figuring out how to keep people who aren't in the same city or state working together cohesively since COVID, that's just become more and more of a problem. So it would be great if I could just wave a wand and instantly everybody had bonded, everybody knew everybody really well. There were all those natural things that you get, the benefit of being in the same office space with it. That was all second nature now. And it's hard, but that's another part of my job is, how do I bring this team together every day? And we have a lot of things that we do on that front as well. So yeah, that would be, give me the wand. I'll take it.
I love it. Love it. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Sterling, for having you on the podcast today. For all those out there that might want to reach out to you, want to learn more, where would they go? How would they find you?
Right. Well, you can go to the Hilgers Graben website. I'll be there, top row. You can also go on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love that. It's one of the few sane bastions of social media left, in my opinion. Or you can check out the blog. 10 Things You Need to Know is in-house counsel. All my contact information is there. I'd love to hear from any of the listeners. That would probably make my day.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for sharing your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.